So today we are continuing in our theme of looking at what does it really mean to be Christian. Because there's a lot of people who name themselves as Christian and they are doing and saying things very publicly that is very different from what I believe. And they would say the same thing about me. But yet we all call ourselves Christian. So we're going through some of these older stories, the particularly more familiar stories, to talk and look at what is God's message to us. What is this bigger thing that we are to be about in 2019? Now today is about the prophet Samuel. This is two different iconic representations of Samuel. To give you a little bit of backstory about Samuel, Samuel was born to Hannah, who had been barren. It's sort of like the Sarah Isaac story or the Elizabeth John the Baptist story, where the woman wanted a child and the child didn't come, and she went to the temple and she prayed for a child and she had a son. And she was so thrilled that she had a son and she knew that this son was a gift from God, that when he became a boy and old enough to leave her, she gave him to the temple. She gives him to the priest Eli. And that's the story that the children listen to today. The children heard the story of Samuel's call. That's where Eli realizes that he's getting too old, and now God is trying to talk to Samuel, his apprentice. But that's one of those stories that we read fairly often. I thought we knew it pretty well. I thought it'd be good to read a different story about Samuel. And so I chose this one. This is another story. The theme of this day is we talk to God. And with the children, it was about prayer. And I'm going to talk about prayer too, but I'm going to talk about prayer in a little bit of a bigger context. So I want you to start by asking you to reflect on your prayer life. What does your prayer life look like? Are you still one who prays at meals, before bed? Do you pray any other time during the day? Do you pray just when you need something? Or is your prayer life more of a conversation, a dialogue? Because I think that's what God's going for. And that's what we see in this scripture about Samuel. Actually, if we look at Samuel's life in the larger picture, Samuel seems to constantly be in this dialogue with God, because Samuel will be the one who does call or appoint, name the new king, and will anoint King David because the first king, Saul, doesn't work out. But that's because Samuel has this relationship with God that they are constantly talking. He's talking and he's also constantly listening for God. And I think that's a big piece of prayer that we often miss. When we teach prayer, even to children, it's very much directed from us to God. But how often do we take that time? This was in last week's lesson too. Take that time to stop and listen. To listen more deeply to what God's saying within our hearts.